Let's talk about honeybees. Honeybees are essential to a great many of our elements of our diets here in America, fruits, vegetables, and such. But they're not native to North America. They came over with the colonists in 1640, and since then the bees and honeybee products have been a going concern. Today, bees are struggling, and they're struggling for a variety of reasons. For natural reasons, they're struggling due to varroa mite, which infests the hives. They also have small hive beetles, which get in and disturb the hives. There's European foul brood, American foul brood, wax moths. So beekeeping today is much more difficult actually than it was in 1640, even though we have a lot of modern devices and chemicals to use. A lot of talk has been in the media and on the radio and television about colony collapse disorder. The scientists believe that it is a problem that is exacerbated by a variety of elements, being chemicals that are used in commercial agriculture, as well as the diseases that are getting the bees. We're not, as a beekeeping community, we're not certain what it is. There's a great deal of research going on here in the US and in Europe. So here we are today in this lovely cabin in the woods, and our task today was to try to remove a feral colony of bees that had settled in up next to the chimney. Feral bees are almost non-existent due to the onset of what I just mentioned, the small hive beetles, the varroa mites, tracheal mites, and other things that have pretty much decimated feral bees. There's probably a beekeeper nearby within range, and that colony of that beekeeper decided to swarm. A bee colony swarms when it becomes overcrowded or there's not enough space, both the same thing. They'll raise a new queen, and the old queen will take half the colony and fly off and find a home. What they'll do is they'll swarm several thousand bees, and the queen will settle into a tree or on something convenient, and then they send out scouts. And the scouts will look for a couple of hours or a couple of days until a consensus is reached that there's a good place. Obviously here the scout bees found a crevice that they could get into the house, not actually into the house itself, but behind the chimney facade. There's probably space in there that they decided was dark, because the bees like it dark and dry and warm. And so the scouts come back, enough scouts come back to convince the swarm, and the queen and the swarm settle in. Once they settle in, they begin building honeycomb. And today, at this effort we have here, we'd have to tear too much of the house apart in order to get the bees out. The bees are not a danger to anyone. They're up off the ground. They're 10, 12 feet off the ground, so they're not going to cause any difficulties unless you have some really tall people walking around. Bees are not aggressive. They only sting when disturbed. And that, when I say disturbed, that doesn't mean just that the colony or the hive is disturbed, but you actually have to pretty much grab a bee or mash a bee, step on a bee, press a bee into your cheek or whatever before it stings. The price a bee pays, a honeybee pays for stinging, is death, because it in essence disembowels the bee. So they do not want to sting unless absolutely necessary, unlike yellow jackets and wasps, which can sting multiple times, and they'll sting you just because they don't like you. There is a great deal more interest in bees than there was 10 years ago. There are a lot more what they call sideline beekeepers. I'm a sideline beekeeper. I have one beehive in the backyard. My wife and I became interested about 5 years ago because there were no bees in our garden. We could no honeybees. When I say bees, there are still native bees, solitary bees, bumblebees that are still working, but there were no honeybees, and that was disturbing to my wife. So we got hooked up with the Carroll County Beekeepers Association, attended their meetings for a year, and then decided we'll plunge in. So now we have one hive that's thriving, doing well. However, going into the hive this last week, I find that I have varroa mites and small hive beetles. And so I'm going to have to do some integrated pest management to take care of the bees. The Carroll County Beekeepers Association. For Carroll County, there's also a group in every county in the state. Howard County, Baltimore County, the Maryland State Beekeepers Association. They are all available to answer questions and to come out and look if you believe you have a problem with whatever kind of bee. What we encourage people to do is to not destroy the bees until they're identified as either being honeybees, which we wish to protect, or yellow jackets or hornets. The honeybees we want to protect. And so there are a bunch of us all throughout the state, and in fact all throughout the country, especially California, where if a house has an invasion, so to speak, of honeybees, we want to try to rescue them. The objective today was to open the house up, to cut out the honeycomb and wax comb that the bees had created, to move that into a hive, a prepared box hive, and then vacuum out the bees with a vacuum system that we have built, and then get all of the bees, including the queen, because we do want the queen. A hive without a queen is not a hive. And then allow the owners of the house to seal it back up. We would spray it in there with a chemical that keeps bees from returning. So the message I'm rambling on about here is that honeybees are our friends. We should be nice to honeybees. They provide us with a great many products. There are approximately 2.5 million hives in the U.S. And there is a lot of agriculture that depends on the honeybees for pollination. Of the 2.5 million hives in the U.S., over 1 million hives are transported to California just for the almond groves to pollinate the almond trees. They also move on through other parts of California to pollinate a great many of the fruits and vegetables that we all like to have on our table. The loss of the honeybee would be catastrophic, both financially and gastronomically, because I don't want to spend the rest of my life eating oats and wheat. I like tomatoes and broccoli and strawberries. So if you should happen to think you have an infestation of honeybees, call one of the clubs, call the Department of Agriculture for state of Maryland, and they'll pass your call on, and we'll send somebody will come out and take a look, and if the bees can be rescued, we will rescue them.